Greetings, I am Gresham and welcome back to Gresham Reads. Today we will be delving into a older book that I found on Dorcas's shelf, Monster Blood Tattoo, Book 1, Foundling. This is a book by D.M. Cornish. Apparently it is by the looks of it, Victorian era perhaps, or maybe Victorian Gothic, not entirely sure. A world where effectively humans and various creatures of unusual nature referred to as monsters live. I will delve further into this intriguing world as the story progresses, but either way, today I will be reading the first chapter, so feel free to listen along. Chapter 1. It began with a fight. It appears that there is a definition. Foundling, noun. Also, wastrel. Stray people, usually children, found without a home or shelter on the streets of cities or even, amazingly, wandering exposed in the wilds. The usual destinations for such orphan children are workhouses, mills, or the mines. Fairly brutal, although a fortunate few may find their way to a foundlingery. Such a place can care for a small number of foundlings and wastrels, fitting them for a more productive life and sparing them the agonies of harder labor. Quite interesting. So in other words, a foundling is akin to an orphan. Okay. We're already seeing some divergence from real life. Rossamünd was a boy with a girl's name. All the other children at Madame Opera's estimable marine society for foundling boys and girls teased and tormented him almost daily because of his name. And this day, Rossamünd would have to fight his worst tormentor, Gosling. A boy who had caused him more misery than any other. A boy he worked hard to avoid. Unfortunately, when it was time to practice Harundo, there was no escaping him. At Rossamünd's feet was the edge of a wide chalk circle drawn upon floorboards so fastidiously cleaned that the grain protruded as polished ridges. Opposite stood his enemy. Regretting the ill fortune that had paired him with its old foe, Rossamünd frowned across the circle. Sour-faced and lank-haired, Gosling stared back contemptuously. The blankness behind Gosling's eyes terrified Rossamünd. His opponent was a heartless shell. He delighted in causing pain, and Rossamünd knew that he would have to fight better today than he ever had before if he was to avoid a beating. You okay, Dorcas?
Yeah, I'm just fine. Just listening.
If you're sure. I'm going to thrash you good, Rosy Posy, Gosling hissed. Enough of that, young Master Gosling, barked the portly cudgel master, Inspector Barthamos. You know the 100 rules, boy. Silence before a fight. Is it Bartamius? It might be Bartamius. Both Rossamünd and Gosling wore padded sacks of dirty white cotton, tied with black ribbons over their day clothes. Each boy held a stock, a straight stick about 2.5 feet long. Harundo was a form of stick fighting, and these were their weapons. Rossamünd was never able to get a comfortable hold on his stock. With the fight about to start, he shifted his awkward grip again. He tried to remember all the names, the moves, the positions he had ever been taught. The 100 rules of Harundo made perfect sense, but no matter how often he had trained or fought in practice, he could never make his body obey them. In Madame Opera's estimable Marine Society for Foundling Boys and Girls, that is quite the mouthful. I might just shorten it, but then again that might ruin the immersion. The only room large enough for Harundo was the dining hall. Trestles and benches had been dragged clear and left higgledy-piggledy against the walls. That is a very rare saying. I don't think I've ever heard that. The cudgel master raised his whistle, and the 24 other children standing around the circle fell silent. Rossamünd noticed some of them grinning knowingly. Others stared, slack-jawed and wondering, while the littlest shuddered with fear. Ghostling twirled his stock with a swagger. Rossamünd looked to the overcleaned floorboards and waited. The whistle shrilled. Ghostling strutted into the ring. "Time to get your scourging, missy," he gloated. "You've managed to dodge me all week, so you'll suffer extra today." "That is enough, Ghostling," bellowed Bartholomeus. Bartholomew, maybe? I'm not sure. Rossamünd barely heard either of them. The 100 rules were racing madly in his mind as he stepped into the chalk circle. If he could just get them straight in his head, surely his limbs would follow. With a venomous snarl, Ghostling rushed him. The tangle of Rossamünd's thoughts served only to tangle his body. Were his hands in the right place? What about his feet? How close was he to the edge of the ring? What was Instructor Bartholomeus thinking of what he was doing? What would happen if he actually did land a blow? Ghostling swept up his stock clumsily. He was not much better at Harundo than Rossamünd. Any other child, even many of the little ones, would have stepped out of the way, just as they should, and given Ghostling a good crack on his back or shoulder. Instead, Ghosling's vehemence forced Rossamünd to take a clumsy backward step. By a small miracle, he got his stock up in time to swat away his first strike. The sticks collided with a deeply satisfying chuck. Ghostling gave a furious curse as he was thrown back. He bared his teeth. That felt right, Rossamünd thought, a tiny glow of triumph within. "No, dear boy, no. Left decede, then counter-offend with a cullix," Instructor Bartholomeus hollered at Rossamünd. "You've seen it done. You've practiced it, lad. Just step away, then behind, then a jab, jab, jab with the handle. A half-hearted sustice is just not enough, boy." Sounds to me like this man expects things to be done a certain way. For a so-called master, he doesn't seem very wise. Combat is not what you expect. It always changes. You do what you need, not what you expect. Falling into a pattern just makes you predictable. But semantics, on with the story. Rossamünd was deflated. Just when he thought he was getting it right, he was actually doing things worse than ever. Ghostling was on him by then, chopping at his head again and again with his stock. Rossamünd blocked one strike, swatted away another, and then let one through. It smacked him crunchingly hard across his cheek and mouth, his head bursting with agony, his face stinging. Rossamünd flung his own stock out wildly, skewering Ghostling right under its ribs. With a wheeze and a gurgle, Ghostling lurched backward. Some of the littlest children gave a tiny cheer, but quickly went silent as Ghostling swung around and glared at them. Rage clearly boiled within him. He threw down his stock and leaped. Instructor Bartholomeus tried to intervene, but Ghostling darted beyond his grasp, tackling Rossamünd about his stomach. "No one stops me," Ghostling hissed through gritted teeth as he drove Rossamünd down to the glistening floor. "That's not true," Rossamünd thought as they tumbled. "The others beat you all the time." Ghostling smashed at him over and over with his fists. Rossamünd saw stars as Ghostling struck him once, twice, 3 more times in the head. Instructor Bartholomeus blustered sharp warnings that were ignored. Finally, he grabbed at Ghostling and dragged him off, but not before Ghostling had landed cruel blows in tender places. Yes, it appears that this Instructor Bartholomeus seems to be quite incompetent. Honestly, who would let that fool teach? The boy swatted at the air as the cudgel master hefted and flung him to the other side of the ring. "Get back, you miserable child!" roared Bartholomeus. Dazzled, his head ringing in pain, Rossamünd thought the instructors were shouting at him, and so he stayed down. Indeed, he found that he much preferred to lie still while the world swam. Though clenched-fisted and seething, Ghostling did not move. Rossamünd groaned. He felt powerful, serious pains he had never felt before. Franzatard, a stoop-shouldered dormitory master, was called, and Verlaine, Madame Opera's parlor maid, too. The telltale sound of Verlaine's rustling skirts arrived well before her. When she saw Rossamünd stricken within the chalk ring, she gave a startled cry. Rossamünd's senses began to fade. He was vaguely aware of voices raised in shrill anger. He dimly felt a cloth dabbing at his face. Somehow, Master Franzatard was already there. The old dormitory master was growling at Ghostling as the other children were shepherded out of the dining hall, with a loud scuffing of boots. Instructor Bartholomeus lifted Rossamünd to his feet and wrapped him in a blanket. Verlaine let him lean on her all the long crooked way to the boys' dormitory, murmuring soothing, almost wordless things as they went. The dormitory was very long and very narrow, and very, very smelly. Side by side, end on end, was crammed a clutter of cots. There was never enough room in Madame Opera's. The dormitory was empty now. The other boys were still attending to classes and day watch duties. Rossamünd's own cot was at the farthest end from the short, narrow door. With the parlor maid's help, he stumbled through the inadequate gap between the beds, adding a stubbed toe to his woes. At least he could lie down, his head pounding, his cheeks pounding, throb, throb. Sharp iron tasting. Verlaine fussed over him. "You'll need a dose of birchit to set you to mending. I will fetch some from Master Crumpollen right away." "You lie still now. I'll return as soon as I can." With that, she swished away. Master Crumpollen was the Foundlingery's dispenserist. This meant that he made most of the medicine and potives the Marine Society needed. From what Rossamünd could gather, Master Crumpollen had once served in the Navy, just as Master Franzatard had done, though not always on the same vessels or for the same states. The old dispenserist had seen half the known world, and cured the rashes and fevers of a great many vinegaroons, as sailors were called. Vinegaroons? I think it might be vinegaroons. But we'll see. but that was all anyone seemed to know of him. He talked even less of his past than Master Franzitar did. Nevertheless, he let Rossamünd sit with him for a few hours at a time while he dabbed and brewed. Most of the time, Most of the time, Krampalin worked in silence, and the boy would just learn what he could by watching. Occasionally, however, the dispenserist became talkative and would instruct him on the uses of potives, showing him how to pour and blend and stir and store. One of the greatest thrills for Rossamünd was to watch the wonderful and often violent reactions between ingredients as Krampalin mixed and matched them. Red goes with green and makes purple. Blue powdered in yellow makes off-white with olive spots. Black boiled in white makes vermilion with orange vapors. How wonderful! These moments were so exciting, Rossamünd would hop about and usually get under the dispenserist's feet. At this, Krampalin would yell, "Pullets and cockerels, boy! Get out of me way for I spill this on you and melt you to a puddle!" Rossamünd smiled woozily at the thought. Now he wanted to sleep, but his aching face would not let him. He stared dumbly at the ceiling, obscure with shadows that seemed to creep and lurch. It had been a long time since he had been in the dormitory on his own. He had forgotten just how weirdly unnerving it could be in here, alone. Such glimpses of the oppressive dark naturally led to his thinking to Gosling. Gosling Corvinus Arbor of the Corvinus Arbors, a powerful family with ties to some of the most ancient bloodlines of Boschenberg and Brandenbrass, far away to the south. He was notorious at Madame Opus for many reasons, but chief of these was the vigor with which he strove to make everyone's life a misery. He would cut the hair of sleeping girls, glue shut the eyes of sleeping boys, put earwigs and dead things in unguarded shoes or untenanted beds, blab any secret he might discover. Punishment, no matter how severe, proved useless, for Gosling just did not care. He had been abandoned at Madame Opera's foundlingery by his family. It was said that his parents had given him up so that they might afford to keep a pair of racehorses. Such a pathetic tale of rejection had not stopped Gosling from declaring to everyone just how important he really was, that he was not just some ordinary fellow with only one name, but he had three: a first name, a forename, and a family name. This grim line of thinking led Rossamünd to brood over his single and unfortunate name. He had spent his entire life beneath the high-peeling ceilings of Madame Opera's estimable marine society for foundling boys and girls. He had arrived when he was little more than a wailing pink prune, left on the doorstep with an old piece of hatbox lining pinned to his swaddling. Upon this bit of card had been written one word, scratched awkwardly in charcoal: Rossamünd. And I'll flash out on the screen to show how it is spelled. With that word he was named. The fact was officially sealed with its entry into the grand ledger that all foundlingeries possessed, and which gave all foundlings the family name of Bookchild. Oh, so he is Rossamünd Bookchild, I see. In the warren that was Madame Opera's, Rossamünd often hid himself away from the taunts and snickers that he still endured from the other children. He would lose himself in his favorite books and pamphlets, reading them avidly. He dared to dream that there could be a better lot for him beyond the Marine Society's corroding walls, and let his head fill with scenes of battles and marauding monsters and the mighty heroes that conquered them. He might have trouble remembering the 100 rules of Hirondo, but the things he discovered within the dog-eared pages of his precious readers would stay with him forever. Soon enough, Verlaine returned. She slid discreetly along the creaking wood, her great tent of many-layered skirts making their telltale rustle. The high ceiling bounced the hissing echoes softly back till the room was filled with the gentle sinuses of her passage. He was certain she floated with her feet some inches off the floor, and to him, this added to her virtue. In his tiny world, Verlaine was Rosamund's favorite. She was short and slight, her earth-dark hair hidden beneath the white cotton bonnet that female servants wore. She adored ribbons and bows, and even the plain workaday clothes she wore had several knotted here and there. The biggest being a great white knot, made from her apron straps, tied in the small of her back. With the crook of her left arm and wrapped in a cloth, she held a small porcelain crock. From it, putrid, mustard-colored fumes boiled and evaporated in the close air of the dormitory, leaving a bad stink. Burchett, befuddled as he was, he still recognized the yellow steam and rank smell. Burchett was a torture masquerading as a cure. Verlaine extracted a small ladle from one of the many pockets in her white apron. She swirled about in the crock with this, and brought it out filled with what he knew would be the most disgusting muck he would ever have the unhappy luck to swallow. "Now hold your nose and open your mouth," she told him sternly. Pinching close his nostril and squeezing at his eyes, Rossamünd opened his mouth. Verlaine spooned the restorative potion as best she could into the tiny hole he reluctantly made with his lips. Rosamund's whole head instantly flared with the fires of 1,000 burning lamps. His nose was filled to bursting with the stinging stench of the mangy armpit of a dead dog, and his nostril hairs withered like straw on a fire. He was certain that cadmium-colored steam was squirting from his ears. Just when he thought he could stand it no more, the burning bursting subsided and left him feeling well and whole. Better. He burped a little yellow bubble. "Thank you, Miss Verlaine," he gasped. Verlaine told him to rest, that she would be back with a jar of water. She left again, and before she returned, Rossamünd was asleep. Well, that was chapter 1, and I must say it is painting a very intriguing story so far. I'm definitely curious to see what this world has in store for us and Rossamünd, and what adventure he will be taken on. If you're interested in finding out with me, feel free to leave a like and a comment down below your opinion on the first chapter, and what you theorize might happen in this book. If anyone has read this book, please avoid posting or commenting any spoilers. I am reading this myself for the first time, and no doubt, judging by how old this book is, Darkus either hasn't read it, or hasn't read it in a long time at the very least.
It has been a good couple of years. At least a decade since I last read it.
I see. Well, either way, if you enjoyed it, feel free to share the video around as well. It might catch someone else's interest, and they might find it just as interesting as I do so far. Though I am curious why it is known as Monster Blood Tattoo. On the cover page of it, because this is an actual physical book, there is a silhouette of a strange creature appearing to slouch its way out of a forest. I'm definitely interested to see if this creature will make an appearance. But either way, make sure to also subscribe to the channel and ring notification bells to be alerted to any videos that go up or any live streams that Darkest begins. In the meantime, I will see you all in the next video. I am Gresham at all, and I do hope you have a pleasant day.